the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. On this particular Sunday, I need to let you guys know something in full disclosure. I am a Patriots fan. I know. And I kid you not. These are the words from my bishop on the day of my ordination. You are sent away from any illusion that you own your life anymore. You don't. You are collared. You are under holy orders, and you serve the Holy One. And my experience is this. Christ sends us to the last place we ever thought of going. Stefanie, you will be sent to proclaim the word to Atlanta Falcons fans. And so here I am. And I find it especially fitting that I'm standing here preaching to a bunch of Falcons fans on Super Bowl Sunday when the country is seemingly in chaos, and the reading for today is from Isaiah. Because at the time of my ordination, we had just suffered the Great Recession and the housing collapse, and these were the words that bishop spoke to me on that day. All God asks is that, like Isaiah, you remember, there will be dark days in your pilgrimage. I bet the Dow Jones will fall again. I'll bet the Patriots will lose again. And I bet there will be times when you and your parishioners are dragged into the shallow end of the church over and over again, and when that happens, you won't know how to fix any of it. But that's the time when God is asking you to say, "Here I am, send me." And so here I am. And I've been a school chaplain for 6 years now, and I can tell you that the most important lesson that my students have taught me is that the priesthood of all believers is real. That though I have been ordained and have been charged with leading, I share my priesthood with all of you. Because you all have access to God. You all have been made in God's image, and you all have been asked to follow Christ and be a light shining in the darkness of the world. It is not up to me, and it's not up to you. It's up to us as a community of believers who are worshiping together. And Isaiah has a few things to tell us about how to do this in a way that pleases God. In today's readings, the people are following the rules. In fact, they are going above and beyond the rules, even fasting on days when they don't need to fast. They are hungry to please God, to be near to God, and so they are going above and beyond. And I can relate to their plight. I have never been more miserable in my life than I was in college, when I had fallen deeply in love with Jesus Christ, and all I wanted was to be near him, to feel his presence. And so I lived an incredibly pious existence, abstaining from parties, refusing to say swear words. You shouldn't say them anyways. I didn't. Stopping to ask random homeless people if they knew Jesus and could they get saved. And a plethora of other acts of piety. I just wanted to be near God, and I felt nothing. And then my dad lost his job, and my grandfather had a stroke, and my brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, each within a few weeks of each other. I was broken, and I didn't have the strength to be pious. I can only be real. I lost my friends, and I ended up finding a couple good friends. I lost my church, and I ended up just going to the nearby Episcopal church because I could walk there and they never expected anything from me. I was totally lost. My family was not financially secure. My gentle and wise grandfather was changed. And my brother was standing right in front of me, but I couldn't find him. My heart hurt. And I was just sad all the time. And I remember I was crying in the student center one day, and somebody followed me outside, and she said, "Hey, you probably shouldn't cry like that because everyone was staring at you." It was the first time I had experienced true loneliness, and from that moment on, I stopped seeing people as projects or as people I needed to save. I saw people as fellow travelers on the road of life because I needed a friendly face. I needed somebody to be kind to me. I needed them. And then, just like that, my true love came out of the shadows and whispered to my heart, "I'm right here. You are not alone." Because Jesus exists in the hearts of all of us, and that's why we need each other to feel a response from God. We call it the priesthood of all believers because we are all one. Our relationship to each other is reciprocal. We can never just go one way. Carol Dempsey says about today's passage that Isaiah redefines worship as a lived experience of being in right relationship with each other and with God. Isaiah tells the people in today's story, the ones who long for being with God, the ones trying to follow the rules exactly just for a glimpse of Him, that fasting in the traditional way won't work. And abstaining from food is not the way that God acknowledges them. No, God says through Isaiah that the kind of fasting He prefers, found in verse 6, is to let the oppressed go free, to share your bread with the hungry, bring the homeless poor into your house, and when you see the naked, to cover them. We worship God best when we take care of each other. Because the truth is that every person on this planet has a piece of God inside of them, and if we don't pay attention to them, we will miss a piece of God. Back in college, my thirst to be near to God drove me to try to earn an A+ in God, right? Like my students sitting here, I wanted to make the highest mark to earn my place next to God and have certainty about my place in heaven. But God is warning us in Isaiah today that while we might be able to make an A+ in math, we cannot make an A+ with God. Personal acts of devotion are useless to a God who has purposefully knit all our hearts together and tied them to His own. If we cannot love one another, if we see each other only as people who need to be saved or as projects and not as simply people, then God tells us in today's story that He will not respond. And I believe that He doesn't respond because He can't. He set it up so that the only way for us to reach Him is if we love one another. He hid Himself in the hearts of every one of us, and if we don't look at each other, we won't find Him. It's why coming to church matters. Can you find God and talk to God and have Him wrap His love around you on the golf course? Yes, you can. Can you do that while you're walking on the beach and having a personal moment of Sabbath? Yes, you can do that. But we will truly know God, and we will not truly know God or get a clear picture of Him without our brothers and sisters. Because He clearly says in verse 7 that it is only when we pay attention to each other's needs and respond to each other that our light shall break forth and our healing will spring up quickly. Do you know that you cannot have communion with only one person? I cannot pour myself a glass of wine and say the magic words and make the sign of the cross and give myself communion. It's not allowed, and it doesn't work anyways. The only way that we can receive the transformative power of Jesus Christ is in community together. Today, we are celebrating the ministry of our school, and it's important to recognize that part of that ministry is providing our students with communion. They are a worshiping community, and that is how they meet God. They are introduced to God through the scriptures, through the worship services, and most importantly, through the establishment of good relationships with each other. They are taught to love and to care for each other, and in so doing, they are not missing the whole point of Jesus' entry into the world. Thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and prophets. These two commandments. If we are searching for God and cannot find him, it's because we are looking in the wrong place. God exists in the face of our neighbor. To figure out how to love everyone that comes into our path is to figure out how to see God. And since we are all tied together in this common priesthood of all believers, I will leave you with the words from my bishop on that day of my ordination. He says, "My experience is this. Christ sends us to the last place we ever thought of going or want to be with people we don't want to be with, to do things we don't think we can do, for Christ's sake. We are sent to be the change we seek to see in the world. It's not enough to preach forgiveness. We are sent to forgive and to ask for forgiveness. Not enough to preach peace. We are sent to make peace. And not with those extremists on the other side of the world, but with people in our own city, even in our own church that might drive us crazy. Not enough to preach radical hospitality. We are sent to welcome the stranger into our hearts and into Christ's church. And when we do it, it won't be the face of a stranger that greets us. It will be the face of God. Amen.